don't try to ruin my life with lies when your life can be ruined with the truth.
Just imagine what the Star Wars world would be if they hadn't dissolved the trust of a massive section of the fanbase. It was bad enough that they intentionally tried to divide us with content they knew a lot of people would reject. It was bad enough that employees of Disney Lucasfilm hurled insults at the fans as if we somehow wronged them. Many of us grew up as nerds, so that was okay. We've learned how to handle abuse, but what we can't abide is watching someone else being attacked for the crime of being herself.
That's all I can stand. I can't stand no more.
The Gina Carano fiasco was enough to galvanize the fan base into open rebellion. Apparently, there's a limit as to how blatant a company can be in its prejudice against independent thinking, and Disney reached it. A great number of people who once spent a ton of money on Star Wars merchandise are no longer willing to spend their money on Disney's crap. Now, admittedly, a large number of fans aren't the sort who tune into channels like mine regularly. These people are the normies who don't live and breathe Star Wars quite like the rest of us. Disney was banking on the normies not paying attention as they delved deeper into the culture war, but evidence continues to mount that Disney has lost these people. Even though they aren't mega fans, many of them are coming to understand that something is wrong in Hollywood.
I sense a disturbance in the Force.
Generally speaking, mega fans are either happy with the direction of a franchise like Star Wars, or they're pissed off. There's really no in-between. Happy mega fans support the business by paying money. Even angry fans help perpetuate it by shining a light on the franchise.
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
But the normies have taken an unexpected turn when it comes to Disney and its very popular franchises. Unexpected, that is, to Disney, but very foreseeable to anyone connected with reality. Things like the firing of Gina Carano have disconnected a large section of the public from Star Wars and Marvel and the like. They aren't angry, they aren't happy, they have a feeling that is absolutely kryptonite to a studio like Lucasfilm or Marvel. Apathy.
In my report will read IDGARA. I don't give a rat's ass.
To prove my point, we're going to dive into the 2021 Nielsen ratings that just dropped and see how Disney Plus did compared to its competition. Spoiler alert, not so good. Then, we're going to dig into the recent Netflix subscriber count debacle and the subsequent plummeting of the company's stock. And then, we'll finish the video off by discussing the future of Disney Plus and what we can do to push back against the SJW wokesters currently in charge of the company. These Twitter SJW lunatics might be shocked to learn how well we can fight back.
I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Now let's see how well you handle it.
Alright, let's take a look at the Nielsen numbers which show us how many minutes content was streamed on TVs. This info came from an article on Deadline, which I will have linked in the description. This first list that we're looking at shows the top 15 movies streamed in 2021. If you look here, everything seems hunky-dory for Disney+. A full 11 of the top 15 most streamed films were on that platform. This is unsurprising, however, since Disney Plus is primarily just basically a babysitter for a large portion of its subscriber base. Most of these films, as you may notice, are cartoons. In fact, the #1 most streamed film by minutes was Luca, which was a major Pixar release that never hit theaters and did not require Disney Plus Premier access to watch. So, this would have given it a major boost. Now, I really only showed the movie list in the interest of fairness, because Disney is admittedly doing well here, and I didn't want to come off as biased. But the results on this list are pretty easy to write off as not very impressive, considering how many parents use the TV to babysit, streaming movies on repeat, which is a practice I despise, by the way. But considering how many do it, a lot of the films in this list are predictable, like Frozen 1 and 2, Moana, and Raya. But it's when we take a look at the top 15 streaming programs that were originals on their respective platform, that's when we can see the effect of things like the Gina Carano incident. Netflix absolutely crushes it in this list. They own 9 of the top 10. Despite the fact that Disney Plus initiated their Marvel content this year, only one of their shows cracks the top 15, and it comes in at number 14. This chart is doubly bad for Disney Plus. It illustrates how grown-ups prefer Netflix alternatives over Disney, and the fact that WandaVision came out ahead of Loki is a bad omen. WandaVision wasn't well received for its first few episodes before the show really hit its stride, which had me thinking it would have had a lower number than the other Marvel shows. However, the fact that it finishes ahead of the other Marvel shows indicates that interest in Disney Plus shows tapered off after WandaVision, which ended in early March. But I ask you this, what else happened at around that time last year?
And I think, honestly, Hollywood's shook. I think they're shook. I think they see the hypocrisy. I think they see the double standard.
Gina Carano was all people talked about last spring, and the cancel Disney Plus movement began right around then. The Nielsen information seems to be further evidence that this movement has some bite. If we look at this chart from Statista, we can see how the growth of Disney Plus has slowed to a crawl, and it's very possible they've hit a bit of a ceiling. They had almost 95 million subs by the end of Q1 of last year, meaning they grew by 21 million from the previous quarter. But that was also the same time right after audiences were wowed by the return of Luke Skywalker at the end of Mandalorian Season 2. In the next quarter, they grew by only 9 million, up to about 104 million total subscribers. They grew by about 12 million more in the third quarter last year, and then hit a roadblock last quarter when they only increased by about 2 million. The numbers started drying up right after the Gina Carano incident, and it looks as though they've hit a bit of a brick wall by the end of last year. Netflix underwent a bit of a financial crisis a few days ago after hearing some disappointing news about their subscriber growth. This article comes from Bloomberg. Netflix shares sink most since 2012 in flurry of downgrades. The article reads, Netflix tumbled by the most since July 2012 as analysts downgraded the streaming giant after it gave an outlook for subscriber additions that fell short of Wall Street's expectations. The sell-off of 22% on Friday dragged the stock to the lowest level since April 2020. At least 9 firms tracked by Bloomberg cut their recommendation on the stock after Netflix forecast adding just 2.5 million customers in the first quarter compared with analysts' expectations for 6.26 million additions.
Gonna cry?
I will now play the world's smallest violin for Netflix, a company I despise for a variety of reasons, not the least of which being the content they put out featuring inappropriate behavior involving minors in the show Cuties. I absolutely love to see this company suffer, but the reason I bring all this up is actually because of what this means for Disney+. If we go back to the list of the top 15 streaming shows, we can once again see that Netflix is absolutely tearing the competition apart. But even with that success, they are not impervious to poor growth numbers. Okay, so what does this mean for Disney? There are two bits of information out there that ought to be sending Bob Chapek, the CEO of Disney, into a bit of a panic as it pertains to his streaming service. Based on the Nielsen streaming charts, it would seem that interest in Disney Plus shows is tapering off. Worse yet, growth for the streaming service has slowed tremendously. It will be extremely interesting to see what the first quarter growth of Disney Plus looks like. I don't think children's movies are going to drive the growth much more than it already has, because it looks like that was the cause of much of their growth already based on the movies being streamed on it. No, I think their best hope is to attract grown-ups with their TV shows, but I have a hard time seeing that happening, especially when the Book of Boba Fett, the only new show with new episodes coming out right now, continues to plummet on Rotten Tomatoes. It's down to a 60% audience score. Imagine this scenario. It's really not that hard. If Disney Plus's growth continues to stall, or heaven help them if their subscriber count goes down, but if it doesn't meet expectations either way, the company's stock could be in serious trouble. I mean, it already is. The investors' meeting should take place in the spring, right around the time Q1 numbers come out. Can you imagine the backlash from investors, particularly after they were the worst performing stock on the Dow Jones last year? And can you imagine the backlash, especially considering that Bob Chapek said this at last year's meeting?
We've been absolutely thrilled that we can have the kind of creative talent in our company, the likes of Kathy Kennedy to run Lucas, and we look forward to having Kathy directing the activities of the entire Lucasfilm organization for many years to come.
You're a moron!
This brings me to my ultimate point. I think that Chapek's ass is getting really burnt on the hot seat right now, and I think it will only get hotter if we continue to withhold our money as a means of standing up for Gina Carano, standing up for our favorite franchises, and standing up for our damn selves. The normies are tuned out. A good chunk of the hardcore fans, like us, are tuned out. The stage is set, and Chapek has much to answer for. The recent memo he put out speaks to a willingness to turn things around in the favor of the fans. I recommend we take the money we save not buying Star Wars and Marvel merchandise, and we use it instead to buy some popcorn, because the investors' meeting ought to be pretty damn entertaining. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty